You know the feeling, right? You're on hold with customer service. Forever. You're in that meeting that's going absolutely nowhere. Or you're just watching someone completely botch a simple task. We call it incompetence. And man, it feels like a totally modern problem. But what if I told you it's not? What if its roots go back to a time when a simple mistake didn't just get you a bad review, it got you killed? Let's dig into the surprisingly deep history of incompetence.
I mean, think about it. The manager who still can't figure out how to share their screen on Zoom. The big shot executive who totally tanks a product launch. The installer who leaves and you realize they forgot the most important part. These moments feel like a tax we all have to pay just for living in the 21st century.
But here's the thing. This is not a new problem. Not even close. Our daily frustrations, they're really just a watered-down, much safer version of a struggle that has shaped humanity from the very beginning.
Look at it this way. The act of failing hasn't really changed. But the stakes? Oh, the stakes have changed completely. Back then, you drop your spear, you and your family might starve. Today, you spill coffee on your laptop, and you just got to make a trip to the IT department. And that shift, right there, is the key to understanding why incompetence feels the way it does today.
Okay, so let's rewind the clock. Let's go way back to a time when failure wasn't just an annoyance, it was fatal.
For our earliest ancestors, survival was basically a constant performance review, and there were no second chances. If you couldn't hunt, if you couldn't build a shelter, if you couldn't find food, you weren't just underperforming, you were a liability. You were a risk the group literally couldn't afford to take.
This quote just nails it. Nature was the ultimate manager, and its feedback was swift and final. It didn't offer a coaching session or a development plan. It just corrected the problem. It ruthlessly called the incapable. Competence wasn't a goal, it was the bare minimum to even get to pass on your genes.
And this brutal accountability didn't stop when we left the caves. The second we started building civilizations, we started writing down rules. And in ancient Babylon, under Hammurabi's code, it was crystal clear. Your work wasn't just your reputation, it was your life. There was no corporate veil, no LLC to hide behind. You mess up, you pay the price.
Can you even imagine our modern HR department in that context? An overseer pulling a pyramid builder aside and saying, "Look, Thutmose, we're going to have to put you on a performance improvement plan." Of course not. The solution was, well, a lot more direct. So you have to ask, right? If the ancient world was so ruthless, how did incompetence even survive? Well, it all comes down to good old human nature. Things like nepotism. You know, the chief's son who can't hunt to save his life, he gets a pass. Pity, social bonds, politics, they all started to muddy the waters. And this is a huge point. Even in the harshest environments, our social instincts started to create a little safety net for incompetence to survive. And that brings us to this massive turning point in history, the Industrial Revolution. This is where our entire relationship with incompetence got flipped on its head.
A guy named Frederick W. Taylor shows up with this absolutely radical idea. He thought, instead of trying to find better, smarter, more competent people, what if we just engineered simpler jobs? Jobs so simple, so broken down, that almost anyone could do them. And just like that, scientific management was born.
I mean, listen to that quote. In the past, the man has been first. In the future, the system must be first. This was a revolution in thinking. Taylor's whole philosophy made the system the hero, not the person. The goal was to remove human skill, human error, and maybe even human thought from the equation entirely.
And his model was brutally effective. You take a complex craft, you break it down into tiny, mindless, repetitive steps. You turn skilled workers into interchangeable cogs in a giant machine. And you know what? This was perfect for the factories of the time, filled with immigrants who didn't even share a common language, let alone a set of skills.
And it worked. My gosh, did it work. It built modern industry. But, and this is a huge but, it came with a massive unintended consequence. It created a workforce that was rewarded for just shutting up and following orders. It trained generations not to think, but to execute blindly. It basically laid the cultural foundation for the kind of institutionalized incompetence we see today.
So you have this factory mindset, and it comes crashing right into another powerful modern idea. This creates the paradox that I think defines our entire era, this constant tension between our democratic ideals and the simple, practical need for competence. Look, the idea that all men are created equal is the bedrock of a free society. It's a moral truth, but it is not a workforce management strategy. And somewhere along the line, that beautiful moral concept gets twisted into this flawed idea that every opinion is equally valid, or that anyone can do any job, no matter their training or expertise.
Let's make this super simple. You're on a plane, flying through a massive storm. Do you want everyone to take a vote on how to land the plane, or do you want the single most competent person on board, the pilot, who's trained for this, to make the call? Of course you want the pilot. We get this instinctively in some situations, but we forget it in so many others.
And of course, the movie Idiocracy took this to its most hilarious and terrifying extreme. It imagined this future where expertise is totally dead, and society is run by these super confident idiots who water their crops with a sports drink because, well, it's got what plants crave. It's satire, sure, but it hits a little too close to home sometimes, right?
So, if systems and culture play such a huge role, is incompetence something we can just train away? Well, the source material here suggests there's a hardwired constant that we just can't seem to ignore.
And this brings us to what some call the 15% rule. The theory goes that in any human group, doesn't matter if it's a company, an army, whatever, you're always going to have about 15% of people who simply will not or cannot do their jobs the way they're told.
But here is the really fascinating part. That 15% isn't just bad workers. It's actually split. About half are the rebels, the creatives, the people who break the rules because they think the system is dumb and they see a better way. The other half are the folks who genuinely struggle with the basics. It's the people at the very top and the very bottom of the performance curve, and they both reject that big, compliant middle.
And this might not be a bug. It might actually be a feature of evolution. Think about the old myth of the lemmings. Most of them follow the leader right off the cliff. But what about the few that don't? The ones that refuse to go? They're the ones who survive. That 15%, both the rebels and the stragglers, they might be our built-in insurance policy against everyone thinking the same way and making the same catastrophic mistake.
And this is a universal constant. It's not just a human thing. I mean, even in Star Trek, the Klingons, a warrior race obsessed with honor and strength, have this problem. In theory, their whole society should weed out the weak. But in practice, you've got politics, family bloodlines, and sneaky schemes that let totally inept leaders, like the House of Duras, rise to power. It proves the point. Even cultures designed to stamp out incompetence can't get rid of it.
So, what's the takeaway? Incompetence has always been with us, and it's probably not going anywhere. The only thing that's really changed are the consequences. Our ancestors paid for it with their lives. We pay for it with frustrating phone calls and meetings that should have been an email. Which leaves us with one final big question. Have we engineered a world that is a whole lot safer, but just infinitely more annoying? And is that progress?